the highlight of your life. The gentleman I'm going to introduce, you know, those people that say, my guest tonight needs no introduction, and then they go on and introduce them for 10 minutes. This guy does not need an introduction to this group. Welcome, Robert Englund.
You're all my bitches.
Gee, I wish some of our politicians had that kind of answer. Okay, Mr. Englund, good evening. I have a question I'm going to ask you at the end. My final question to you is going to be, what do you know at 75 that you wished you'd known when you were 25 and you were out there doing your thing with the theatrical arts? So I'm going to ask that to you later, okay? That's the last one. Meanwhile, I just wanted to say that, well, I'm going to ask, why don't you ask the first question?
My first question?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Englund, I know that when you were cast as Freddy was a bit off character for you when in your career. So talk to me, how did that, affect your career? How did it change your trajectory, and how did you imagine your career going?
The happy accident of a career can come from many directions. And with me, I was an established character actor in Hollywood, and I had worked A-list throughout the 70s, working with Barbra Streisand and Burt Reynolds and Charles Bronson and Jan Michael Vincent, all the big stars of the 70s. I even starred with Henry Fonda and Susan Sarandon and people like that in films. But I wasn't a name, I was just a face. And people would buy me a beer or a Bushmills in a bar, and I'd get that look like, did I go to high school with you, or you're that guy? And then I had back-to-back, and again, actors can't predict this. They don't teach this in acting school or university. I had back-to-back hits that were international. One was a television series called V, and it was science fiction. And I learned very soon, quickly, that science fiction, fantasy, and horror movies travel well. They speak the international language of cinema, of movie making, and audiences all over the world can love them, as opposed to comedy. Yes, there's a couple of comic stars we know, but go ahead. Name 6 of the top comedians in Portugal. Survey says. They don't know who Jay Leno is over there. But they know our action stars, and they know our fantasy stars, and they know our horror stars, and we know their fantasy stars. We all know the casts of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, and these things are international, and horror is international. And there's some countries in Europe, in fact, that celebrate it more than we do. There's no stigma about being in a horror movie. And when I would go over there and visit early on, I was treated like I could have been a Western star. I could have been a romantic comedy star. There's no stigma about being in horror films over there. And so the back-to-back success of V and the release of Nightmare on Elm Street internationally, for the first time in my life, people knew my name. They put my name to my image. And I was international overnight, which meant that I can work in Europe, which doubles your capacity as an actor for work. And as of today, I think I've done 14 or 15 movies over there. Spain and Italy, several in London, Bulgaria, Romania, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Africa, Israel, Mexico, lots of times in Canada. Well, that's not really foreign, is it? But it's the gift that just keeps on giving. And I'm also blessed that at the same time, historically, the new technologies giving us access to viewing and wine. We're a
The kind of star treatment we give our hosts.
Come on, you guys, it's happy hour somewhere. I'm going to do my Dean Martin act. No, anyway. But that great gift of being an international actor and being able to work there. And I've done like 14 movies, at least, over there. And so when things would get slow for me in Hollywood, I'd run over to Europe and chase some girl around a castle in Spain. You know, it's a great life. And as you get older, it's just really fun because I've been going over there for so long. Just like we all know cool little places near us here for staycations in Wisconsin or lakes around here that are nearby, or places that you guys have, but the family has inherited an old cabin or something. In Europe, I've been going there so long, and because I'm working, I'm not a tourist, the crews and the casts of the films I work on, they turn me on to their favorite restaurants and their favorite lake and their favorite river and their favorite little funky beach resort that nobody knows about. And I've got now 50 years of that. You know, so when Nancy and I go over to shoot a little movie or to attend a film festival, we just tack a week on and we go somewhere where we're known. You know, it's like the theme song from Cheers, you know, walk in and they bring me a wine. No,
we do that.
And this is all as a direct result of the 1-2 punch of genre success for me, which was the original Nightmare on Elm Street and V hitting internationally at the same time. And that's really what changed my life. Those projects made me international.
Speaking of sci-fi, from what I understand, I just read this recently, and can you confirm, do I understand it that you actually helped get Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker?
No. See, this is the internet, you guys. Listen.
The internet, don't listen to
Opinion and Dixie cups with a string in them are not the truth, you guys. You know, I hate it when I hear people, you know, rag on journalists. Those guys have to go to college. They learn that you have to have 3 sources and facts to back up anything you put in a newspaper. Now, you're all entitled to your opinion, and we can all give our opinions and feelings about stuff on the internet, but that's not fact-checked. Here's the facts. I never helped Mark Hamill get a job in his life. Mark Hamill was the most successful, busiest television actor I knew. I was a movie actor in the early 70s, and Mark was a television star. And Mark had to buy the pizza and the Heineken. Because I was barely cranking out a movie and a half a year. I went up for Apocalypse Now, the Francis Ford Coppola movie about Vietnam, but it's really about more than that. It's really Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. What you find out about your fate going up the river. And I wanted desperately to get a crack at the role of the Cookie, the Cajun chef, played by the brilliant Frederick Forrest, the late, great Freddie Forrest. And if the children would all put their hands on their ears, I'll quote his famous line, then you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. Fucking tiger, man! That's the part I wanted, and I was too young. And almost immediately they told me that when I went up for it. But they said, you know, you might be right for the surfer. And then they just told me that now we want to go really young, make a sacrificial lamb out of the surfer that surfs behind the PT boat in the Mekong Delta. So I didn't get a part in Apocalypse Now, and I'm skulking in the office, and the producer says, but you know, they're having a problem across the hall. He goes, Georgie Lucas is making a space movie, and they're having some problems. Maybe you're right for some. So he walks me across the hall. This is a major Hollywood producer. And of course, George Lucas is one of my favorite directors because of American Graffiti, which is a song that sings perfection to my generation. And I go across the hall, and what apparently I've learned this subsequently, they were a little jammed up. I think they had conceived of Han Solo older, much older, like that uncle that gets invited for Thanksgiving and rolls joints for the kids. You know? And I think Tom Selleck turned the role down. I'm not swearing on the Bible to any of this, but this is what I've heard subsequently. He fell out. I think Harrison Ford was under contract to Zoetrope, which is Francis Ford Coppola's studio. And we know that Harrison was also in Apocalypse Now. And so that's probably how he we got fed into the role. They looked at me for 5 seconds, across the hall. They took a Polaroid of me, and that was it. I was dressed kind of thrift shop military for my Vietnam movie interview, and maybe they felt it looked right a little bit for Han Solo for a split second. They never even considered me, but on my way out of the office, with my tail between my legs, because I'd been rejected now by 2 of my heroes, I glanced down at the audition sides for a character called, and it popped out to me, Luke Skywalker. That's like the coolest name in the world, right? Luke's, like Ronnie Dakota. Luke Skywalker. I mean, just a really cool name. I mean, this is Lucas, coming up with these great names that have now become part of the fabric of our culture. And I looked at it, and I looked at the breakdown, and I think I might have even folded it up and stole it and put it in the back of my pocket. I went across the street to the famous old Formosa bar and sat between Errol Flynn's old stand-in and a guy who did all the sound mixes on Elvis's movies. And I looked at it and I read it, and I had a Bushmills, and I got in my 2000 Datsun beat-up MG and drove over the hill to my apartment in the canyons of the Hollywood Hills, walked up to my apartment, my cool Richard Schindler apartment, and there were a pair of Acme cowboy boots. Remember those Acme boots from the 70s? No, you guys are too young. Everybody had Acme boots in the 70s. And there was a pair of them piled up in front of my door. And whenever I saw that, I knew it was Mark Hamill, because he was shooting a television series right down at the bottom of the hill. And Mark was a good friend of my girlfriend and I, and she was working on a little script that you might know, Lost Boys, my title. And Mark was in front of the TV with a Heineken and a cold piece of pizza he would watch the Mary Tyler Moore Show and the Bob Newhart Show. They were back-to-back reruns from 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we would all gather, then we'd all call our agents. And I just told Mark, I said, George Lucas, we both love George Lucas. I said, George Lucas is doing this movie, and this part might be right for you. That's it. That's the whole story. That's all there was to it. I think Mark's agent takes umbrage with me telling this story because she may have submitted him. I don't know. But I know Mark didn't know about it when I told him about it that afternoon when he got on the phone, got on the horn to call his agent. But I tell this story, and I love this story. I like to share it with you guys because it's my once upon a time in Hollywood. Once upon a time in Hollywood, Robert Englund, who went on to play Freddy Krueger, lived with a girl named Jan Fisher, who went on to write Lost Boys. And sleeping on their couch most nights was a kid named Mark Hamill, who went on to play Luke Skywalker. And it's just that moment of 70s out-of-work actors in Hollywood that's why I tell this story. Not that I helped Mark get the part, because I didn't, but that we were all in that second of time together, just that moment before we all started to ascend.
Hey everyone. Flashback Weekend.
Oh, this is better than a Heineken.
Go ahead. Everyone, a micro from Flashback Weekend. Hearing Robert talk about 70s cinema. I have an idea. Let's see a clip from 70s cinema in which he was amazing. Roll a clip.
Oh, wait just a second. I'm going to set it up.
Wait, still pumping iron. Too bad the bad boy got to sit in on the set.